For as long as I can remember, I have had migraines. I wish they were just the sensitive to light and smell kind of migraines you pop in Excedrin and you get on with your life. No. I get the completely debilitating ones. They come with fever, nausea, and little shadows out of the corner of your eyes. That's usually the first clue. I see the shadows in the peripheral of my vision. The dark auras eclipse everything out of the corner of my eyes. I know the second I see these floating entities that I need to get into a dark room with hydrocodone and a cup of chamomile tea. The doctor calls them cluster migraines, but I really have no clue what he means by that. All I know is the pain gets worse every time around. They come about once a month. Then this last month, things began to change. They became more frequent, increasing in intensity. It started about 2 weeks ago. The headache was due to come on, and the black wisps were floating around harmlessly in my peripheral, and I knew it was time to get home. My boss is a pretty understanding woman, and being a decent level public accountant, most of my work can be done at home. With a letter of medical problems from my doctor, my boss usually lets me go home at the first sign of a migraine. As soon as I walked into my door, I immediately closed all the curtains, turned off all the lights, and used only a battery-operated candle for necessary lighting. I grabbed the Vicodin from the medicine cabinet and lay on the couch with the tea. The only thing to do was sleep it out. Even in the extreme absence of light, I could see the auras moving around violently with a sudden intensity. The strangest thing of all happened. A loud blaring began in my ears. It was like a tinnitus ringing, but louder than anything I had heard before. It felt like I felt the scream rip from my chest, but I couldn't hear it over the deafening ringing. I rolled onto my side and wrapped up my pillow I kept on the couch for these days around my head. I prayed the Vicodin would kick in at any moment and knock me out. The blessed darkness came, and I slept a heavy sleep. I dreamed of blood and screams, both of which things could be explained away by the amount of pain I was in just a while before. Awakening sometime later, the headache was hanging on only by a thread, and the ringing in my ears had dulled down considerably, but was now replaced by a whooshing sound, like you would hear on the inside of a conch shell. I went back to bed several hours later, and the next morning the last of the residual headache was gone. Work was, as usual. I used up some of the time after work that day to catch up on everything that needed to be done the previous day, having done a bit of it between the nap and actually sleeping. As I looked around the area where I worked, I could hear the whispers of those who usually said hi to me first thing in the mornings. Miss Barstow called me into her office shortly after work that day to talk to me, where she scared the hell out of me. Apparently, that nap I took after the headache was longer than a nap. I was out for 2 days. I couldn't wrap my head around what she was telling me. Look, you're one of the best workers I have. Your coworkers look up to you, and the account holders you're responsible for say nothing but the best about you. So I'll let this accident go, one time. However, this cannot happen again. Understood? Miss Barstow used a kind but stern voice. I just nodded, my head in shock of all the time that I had lost. Had I mixed up the Vicodin and the Ambien in the cabinet? They look nothing alike and are completely different sizes. But maybe I was more dazed than normal. The whole situation made less and less sense as it went on. The rest of the week was hectic, catching up on the extra day of work I didn't even realize I had lost. Sunday I was off, as well as the following Monday. I was just sitting down to watch the game, because I love football, and the auras came back. They were darker than usual, swirling more violent than ever before. It was almost like they were waving at me. The ringing started almost immediately after I noticed the auras. I didn't even make it to the bathroom to grab the painkiller. I just collapsed on the floor, grabbing my head. The pain was searing from my eardrums, racing across the brain, setting fire to every neuron it crossed. It was as if boiling water was funneled into my skull. I stood up to head to the bathroom, and the next thing I knew, darkness was engulfing me as I writhed on the floor. For the first time in my life, I fainted from pain. There were no dreams, just knowing that even in my sleep, wildfire roared across my gray matter. Awakening, however long later, I doubt I'll ever know, the headache was gone, but both the auras and tinnitus were still there. The shadows seemed to wave at me. The ringing started to sound like speech, very high-pitched speech. I was losing my ever-loving mind. I called into work and told my boss that I was leaving for an emergency and that I wouldn't make it in for a few days. I was so confused. Why were the auras still there? They came on more and more frequently. Almost every other day, I began alternating between Vicodin and Ambien to sleep and to not feel pain. But I'm almost out now, and neither prescription was meant for everyday use. The auras are closer now. I can see the faces. They smile at me and ask me for help. They want out, but when I tell them I don't know how to release them, they scream so loud. For hours and hours, they never stop screaming. The high-pitched ringing in my ears was only a taste of their volatile voices. I don't know how much more screaming I can take. I reached the end of my chain within an hour of the screaming this time around. In the dining room is my mountain bike. The spokes will be perfect. I take the last Vicodin and Ambien. Heading to the kitchen, I began to boil water. Once it has begun to roll, I stick one of the spokes in, letting it stay to clean off the germs and bacteria. With careful precision, I slowly poke the spoke into my ear canal, stopping when I come across a thin membrane. The screaming's louder now, louder than ever before. With a single, quick thrust, I pop through the eardrum, quickly repeating it with the other ear, and silence engulfs me. For the first time in weeks, the screams are gone. I look at the heavy spoon sitting on the counter next to the spoke and boiling water. Soon I won't see the auras anymore either.